Now let's go some of the most common social media marketing questions you might get in a digital marketing job interview, and I'll provide answers so that you can ace that part of the job interview. One of the most common questions you might get is, how do you choose the platforms in which you're most active? Because there are so many, right? Reddit, Twitter, now X, YouTube, and the list goes on and on. How do you choose where to spend most of your resources? And the answer is, you want to choose based on your audience understanding, like your audience demographics and psychographics and the kind of content you're going to be creating and your brand goals. And also, if you're savvy, you're going to look at where there's less competition. Maybe there's a new social media platform that came up, like a most recent one that became popular and maybe kind of died off, but it's Blue Sky. And then before that, a few years ago, obviously, TikTok arose. Now TikTok is saturated, but there was a point where it was kind of a green pasture, open field. So you want to be on the lookout for those platforms because that would be very savvy to jump on them sooner before everybody else. And of course, equally, you want to see where do your competitors successfully engage, and that might give you a clue as to where you can also successfully engage. Now, question number 2 that you might get is, how do you build a social media or a content calendar? Or you might get a question like, what is a social media marketing calendar or a content calendar? It's a calendar so that you're not posting randomly, like you're not waking up every day and thinking, what should I post today? So you and your team plan it out a month in advance, or at least a few weeks in advance, and you plan what you're going to do on social media. You plan out your blog posts, you plan your content topics so you know when to create it and when to release it. And you build it out with your goals in mind, themes in mind that you're going to cover this month. Maybe map some content formats and content strategies, plan out your posting frequency, compare that to the resources you have that are devoted to this so that you don't overwhelm your team. Integrate monthly events. Maybe there's like Thanksgiving or Christmas or some other holiday you want to incorporate that in your social media calendar. And additionally, various trends or promotions that you plan to run. All of that has to be organized in advance in collaboration with your marketing team and other greater teams within the company so that everyone's on the same page. There's no bottlenecks and everything gets posted and actually is effective when it's posted and gets engagement. Now, another question that's popular when it comes to talking about digital marketing is, how do you measure ROI? And it's specifically a common question in social media marketing because, like, okay, great, you got a like and an upvote, but I made no money, right? So a lot of likes, no money. So you want to be serious a little bit and answer, what is ROI, which stands for return on investment. To track how much revenue you're able to generate, you want to track a few things in your analytics like sales conversions, actual revenue, how many leads you're getting, metrics like cost per action. That's especially if you're running ads, which basically stands for how much you need to spend on advertising before some action like a purchase happens. There's also a metric that can be measured like assisted conversions because you rarely make a sale from the first time you advertise to a potential client. You need to take them through a sales funnel, maybe multiple touch points, maybe through email marketing, through retargeting with ads, etc. So that's an assisted conversion. And with that, of course, you have to be able to attribute the sales conversion to the right actions. So you also want to have accurate attribution models, and that's how you measure ROI. So you don't do social media randomly and post and are happy with likes or retweets, but you actually, on the back end, track it with analytics for conversion. Now, you might also be asked, what kind of content performs best on which platforms? Like, what kind of things should you post where? So you might say that on Instagram or TikTok, short videos are great. Obviously, Reels is an Instagram thing, but short form content is best there. On LinkedIn, you want to post new ideas, things that have to do with thought leadership, maybe B2B insights, professional topics do well there. On Facebook, you want to have posts that have discussion prompts so that there's extra community engagement and interaction after the actual post. And on Twitter, you might post timely updates and opinions because it's so quick. You want to be quick to different topics. Now, number 5, if you're at a job interview, your interviewer might want to know how you respond to negative comments. What's your strategy? There may be already a corporate culture or playbook for how to respond to negative comments, but you might say something like you want to acknowledge and listen to even negative comments, see if there's a kernel of truth in them, treat everybody kindly, offer solutions, but ultimately you might want to move the sensitive conversations to more private channels so that they don't become public. Now, you might be also asked, provide an example of how you improved engagement, which is where you actually have to provide an example. So it's really helpful to have freelancing projects or other previous projects, or actually even examples of your own work on your own social media accounts and your own business. Because what you want to be able to say is, I analyzed certain posts that have the highest engagement, and then I did more of that, and it increased my engagement 40%, or some kind of metric that you can show. But most importantly, you want to have a success story that's true. So a lot of times, your job interview doesn't really start at the job interview. Your job interview starts with all the experience you give yourself prior to that, so you can have more impressive answers. But surely, your job interviewer will ask you about something concrete that you did. So yes, it helps to know the right answers to different questions, but it equally helps to have the right experience. Now, question number 7 is, how do you manage a large community on social media? For a large community, what you want to do is set community guidelines that are publicly available and visible, easy to find. You want to be able to respond quickly, encourage user-created content, and at the same time, users who are very active, you might want to invite them to be moderators. Very often, large groups take on a life of their own, where people just post questions, post comments, without needing your interaction. Of course, you may choose to micromanage the group and lead it into a certain direction, but very often your most engaged users will be successfully moderating the group anyway. But of course, you want to always be there and read the comments so you can track sentiment and change course at any time if necessary. Like if things get too negative, you want to ban some users so that things stay generally positive. And even if you don't ban users, you at least want to message them privately to see if you can placate their concerns so that they can become more positive publicly. Now, you may also get slightly more technical questions like, what's the difference between reach, impressions, and engagement? So your answer might be something like, reach is unique viewers, how many people you reach. Impressions have to do with total views. You see the difference? Reach is about people, viewers. Impressions are about views. So one viewer can have many views. And engagement is total interactions, like combination of likes, shares, comments, upvotes, downvotes, whatever you have on your social media platform of choice. The sum of that are your interactions. And that's how you measure engagement in strict terms. Because a lot of people say, oh, I got a lot of engagement or little engagement, but that's not a professional answer. There's actually a mathematical formula here. You can just add all of these. So it's not a complicated mathematical formula, but nevertheless. Now you also might get a question, what is UGC or how do you use UGC? UGC stands for user-generated content, which means you might feature customer stories, testimonials, let customers post photos, like for example, Twitter or Reddit. It's all UGC. The actual employees don't post anything. So a lot of social media websites are all UGC, and you may allow your customers to post some content, but it has to be moderated. But at least you want to know what UGC is and how it's generally used. And also, of course, you'll get the question of how do you grow followers organically? If you're talking about social media marketing, this is arguably the most important thing. Everybody wants more followers, right? Or more reach or whatever. And the general, very high level answer might be consistent posting, optimized titles and hashtags, collaborating with other influencers, using UGC, like posting content made by your customers, engaging in the comments so that people appreciate that you're active with them. And of course, leveraging any trends, like if there's some trends or holiday or some news, you want to jump on that and post something appropriate for that. But perhaps most importantly is quality. Quality of your posts will get people to look at your posts next time and next time and next time and next time. And if the posts are just so-so, not that interesting, people will not come back to them. So these are some of the most common job interview questions related to social media marketing.